Hi. Hang on, I'm just throwing shit around here. And we are live. What's going on? Okay. For some reason, everything quit on me. as long as it's live. Live. Is it live or Memorex? So here we are live after breakfast with my brother. He says hi. So I'm going to be reading to you from my story. Let me see. I don't seem to my live chat on or what? What's going on, man? What's going on? Live chat will appear here, but I don't see it. There we go. No, we don't. Okay, I don't know who's here. I cannot say. Live link. Yeah. I don't know. I can't say one way or the other. No. So I don't know if anybody's here. That'll do her. I don't know what to do. Irene should be here, but I don't seem to have. Oh, there it is. Write your message down on the bottom. Oh, it's this stupid thing. I just. Okay, never mind. I'm talking to myself. Okay, so we'll just wait here for a minute or two. La di dee dee dee, la di da da da. Nobody's coming on, and that's just the way it goes. I'll have to read it with no one here. That's okay. I do that all the time, don't I? So this is what's going on now. I'm going to finish reading all of this in probably September-ish, I think, at 2 chapters a day. Yeah, something like that. And then after that happens, well, in August, I will be starting a new project, and that will be the Apocryphy. That is the big magnum opus. That is the one that I started when I was 28, because that's how old the hero is. I knew there was a reason I did that. So now it's like I'm 68. So it's been 40 odd years or whatever. And I'm going to start rewriting that and posting that up here as a serial novel. And it's going behind a paywall, but it's going behind a paywall and not behind a paywall. What I'm doing is I will do first chapter on the Monday, and then I will do the pay chapter, the second chapter after that on the Friday. And then on the Monday following that, I'll post the chapter 2 or whatever you want to call it. And then on the Friday, I will read the chapter 3. And then on the Monday, I will post that. And then it's like, and then on and on and on. And then there will be times when I will write different things I will write like why I wrote this particular character or how I wrote this character or that kind of stuff, informative stuff that's like, boring to other people, but to other people, it might not be. It's basically for people who are into historical fiction and perhaps even a Los Biblos. That's the original title, Los Biblos, because it was made in the city of Biblos. That's what my dad told me, and he never lied. He was smarter than me. So what is the Apocryphy? The Apocryphy is a novel that I wrote, and it had at its last iteration 256,000 words or something to that sort. I wrote it 3 different times. Each time I wrote it, it was a little longer, a little less, a little longer. It ended up at 225 and then back up to 256 because, you remember things or you learn things or whatever like that. When I first started it in my 20s, 28-ish, There was no internet. There were no there were no home computers even. So you had to go to the library and do all your research in the library, and then I would get interlibrary loans, and I would get books from all over the place, and then I would take them to work, and I would not video, what do you call that? Photocopy them. I would photocopy the books, and then I would bring them back to the library, and then that way I would have the information that I needed. And it took a long time, but whatever. But what I did with the story, where I found the story, it was I discovered the word. I stumbled across the word apocryphal, and I was like, oh, in high school, I guess, and so I didn't know what exactly that was. So I looked it up, and I went, well, that's interesting. Imagine, like, all these gospels and things that they tossed out because they didn't fit the canon as far as they were concerned when they had the Council of Nicaea in the 320s or whenever that was. And so then that's when they gathered all the books and decided that this was going to be gospel and this wasn't. And some of them they tossed out and they put them in apocryphal collections. So then I thought, that's interesting. At first I was going to make it into a poem. Because, I do that. And then I thought, no, there's a story here. And then I got into the Annals of Imperial Rome by Tacitus, and I started reading that, and I stumbled across a little thingy in book whatever it was, and it was from the year 47 or 48, and it was the Empress Messalina. And then that loses part of that. But she had this guy arrested, Decimus Valerius Asiaticus. Funny how I remember that name, eh? She had him arrested because she wanted to confiscate his gardens, the gardens of Lucullus, that he had bought, refurbished, and prettied it. And then once it was all done, she decided that she wants to take it. So she had him arrested. And so I thought, that's an interesting story. I like that. So if I wove my fiction through that, that would make an interesting story. And then it's like I could take the Acts of the Apostles and have another little part of the story that would weave through that as well. And then I thought, oh, cool. So I started writing this story, and it didn't come up very well at first. Then I redid it a couple of years later, I guess. And it came out a little bit better, but I never really did finish it. I thought like, I didn't know where I was going with it. I didn't have a real plan. I couldn't plot it out because I just I didn't have all the research that was needed. I didn't know all the shit that I needed to know. So now I have a computer sitting on my desk. I mean, that's science fiction for me, right? In our childhood, we dreamt about that kind of stuff. So now I have a computer sitting on my desk. I have the accumulated knowledge of mankind at my fingertips. And I'm thinking, I can use Wikipedia, I can use Google, I can use Chat GPT to ask questions such as how many people attended in a sacrifice? What were the names of the instruments that they used? How did they dress? Like that kind of stuff, because you need that kind of stuff to flavor your fiction with. And I thought, like, I think maybe I should redo this because I always said that I would do it when I retired. Well, I'm retired now. And if I don't start it now, well, what if I died? Well, I will die, but I mean, like, what if I died? And then it wouldn't be finished. And that would be a waste because, like I said, it's my magnum opus. Like my story, The Shield of Locksley. I wrote that, the what do you call those, the chapter headings when I was 17, 18 years old, and I put it away for 40 years. I put that thing away. And then it's like, I thought, well, I should just do this. And I just started it, like, right from scratch. Didn't have a plot, just used the table of contents as my my storyline, and just asked myself, what if? That's all I ever do. When I write, I ask myself, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if they say no? What if they say yes? What if so and so dies? What if they don't? The usual shit. I do that all the time. And that's really great when you're writing a serial and when you write by the seat of your pants. But basically what I do now. I mean, I used to try and plot things out. I never stuck to the plots. So I just wing it. Like this, because I write novellas too, right? And the novella that I'm writing, the revolutionary, his wife and her lover. I started that just because I like the title. I just like the title, and so it's like, oh, that's a cool title. I got that from a movie that I saw back in the '80s. What was it called? The cook, the thief, the cook, his wife, and her lover, something like that. It was really strange, a really bizarre kind of a movie, and I liked that title because it was so weird that I thought, well, I can make that into my title. So I've included that in my little collection of Tales of the Vienna Woods, which is The Bashful Courtesan. Irene knows about that. She has a copy of it. And the Cinderella and Her Sisters, and now The Revolutionary, His Wife and Her Lover. And that will be my second trilogy novel coming out in, I would say, December-ish, time for Christmas. And those are my plans for the future moving forward. So yeah, so I get the book, and then I get what do you call the other book? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do breakfast with my brother instead of like after breakfast with my brother. Once I finish this, I'm going to take my little what is that thing called? iPhone. I'll show it to you because it doesn't work. I mean, it's not a phone. It's just the camera. It's just hooked up so that I can, so that before they used to have this hooked up to the computer, you could only do it on the phone. So this is the wife's old phone. I gotta put it away. It's like falling. Uh, that's the wife's old phone. It's not a phone. It's just a camera for me. And so then I'm going to take that to the restaurant, take my handy dandy little microphone to the restaurant, and I'm going to put it in between us. And my brother and I are going to sit down and have breakfast, and we're going to chat. And I have to convince him that maybe he should read my book. My brother is 72. Yes. He's 72, and he's 72, and he hasn't read a book since high school, and he didn't even finish high school because he joined the Air Force instead. So yeah, he hasn't read a book since he was like 16 or 17, and he has no intentions of reading a book. He thinks that big books make great doorstops. Can't argue with that logic, but that's what he goes by. And so I have to convince him to read a book, and all he ever tells me is to shut my mouth because, he's the big brother. I am the baby, even though I'm like, yeah, I am the baby, and he's the middle child. He's the one that can't win for losing, which is really funny because, he'd have to cut the grass because I couldn't push the lawnmower. I was 9. He's like, 15 going on 16. Yeah, so he could push the lawnmower. I couldn't because I was too small. He could paint the house. I couldn't because I was too small. He had to do all the hard stuff. I didn't because I was too small. And then by the time we grew up, or by the time I grew up, we moved out of that house and didn't have to do all that kind of stuff. I cut the grass, but my mother enjoyed cutting the grass too. So there you go. I got away with murder, but it is what it is, right? Anyways, I'm going to try and convince him that he should be reading my story, or my book, I should say, and he doesn't like to read. So it'll just be bickering and bantering and the usual sibling talk. and we discuss a lot of different things. We discuss, we were discussing the World Cup today. Predictions. Predictions. I said what do you call it? The Netherlands is one guy predicted that the Netherlands would win it, and we're like rah rah, as I'm watching him wearing his Amsterdam T-shirt, and he said he was watching, or his daughter was watching one, and she told him that that guy said Canada would win, and I just laughed at him and said, "Yeah, that ain't happening, dude. Like we both know that." Like, although we watched the game, the controversial game, I guess you would call it, with the broken leg and all that stuff, and I was impressed. They were really good. And then we have this guy on the team that he's the local favorite because he used to play for our team, the Whitecaps here. Alonzo Davies even has a cool name, right? But he was a kid. He was what you call a phenom when he was 16 and he was playing professional soccer with the Whitecaps at 16. Like what the hell? What the hell? Yeah, and he couldn't go to parties that the team would have or anything like that. Like he couldn't go after practice. He couldn't go and have a beer with the guys. He had to go home and do his homework, which is funny. So then, when he did actually turn, I guess about 18 or whatever, the management of the Whitecaps said that he was too good to keep in a small little place market like ours, and that they were going to trade him to Bayern Munich or something like that in Germany. I don't really recall which team he went to, but he went to Germany, and he went because he said the kid deserves to be on the European stage. I thought, ooh, that's that's pretty good of the team to think that way. That he needs the exposure, and so they gave it to him, which is great. I wish I could read who was on here, but it doesn't show up here. Right here. If I put down hello, is there anybody out there? Hello? There. Now I got my name. I can see somebody. There we go. All you have to do is anybody just answer so I can see because it's not telling me who's here. Whatevs. It is what it, look at, I have 6 people or 5 because I don't count myself, do I? So, I've been talking a lot. It's been 17 minutes, and I'm going to read my story because that's what we're here for. This is A Beginner's Guide to Time Travel, which I know I've said it before, is a story that I wrote in the NaNoWriMo challenge 4 years ago. And I wrote it as I wrote it to get myself writing again because I had stopped writing because I had an accident in the beginning of the year at work, and it was a horrific thing. It was a death that resulted in it, and I couldn't write anymore. I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to do anything, and so I did that, the NaNoWriMo, to force myself to write. I had joined on Substack in June, and all I was doing was posting my stories, the ones that I had, and because I just couldn't do anything, and I actually enjoyed being here, and then I said I got to write a story because I'm going to run out of stories. I need to write one. So then I started writing a story, and I put that to the side, and then I just did the NaNoWriMo to get myself motivated. And that was literal fly by your pants, seat of your pants. Like I had no plot. I had no idea where the story was going to go. I just had this old title that I found in my files, and I had like 2,000 or 3,000 words in it. And I just went, oh, well, maybe I'll just expand on this. And there you go. And the rest, they say, is history. And it's like now I've got chapter 15. Like, whoa, we're reading chapter 15 and 16 today. I hope you've been listening. Well, you can go back and listen to these, can't you? I forgot all about that part too. So I'm going. into part 4. Don't ask me, I'm lost. Part 4, and this is Wit. Wit is the name of the barbarian. That's okay. Well, we'll just call him barbarian for the sake of that. This is in the future, about 350 years into the future. At this time, there's been a huge cataclysmic event worldwide. The volcanoes have erupted. The tectonic plates have shifted. Half the North American continent is like gone. It's just it's a horrible. It's like the world's gone through a mini ice age because of all these volcanoes. Where it's like so it's bad, and so there's not a lot of technology around. And so this guy, he ends up being pulled into the future because these other people come back into the past, and they want to prevent him from doing something that he doesn't understand any of it. And so then he ends up going through this portal and getting sucked into the future. So he doesn't really get sucked into the future. He actually gets stuck inside somebody's mind. He's stuck in their body, and he can't figure out why or how or any of that. He's got to figure all of that out before he can figure anything out. And the reader, as they go along, understands this. And he comes awake every once in a while. He's able to use this person's body to speak. But most of the time, he just lays dormant. He can hear what's going on. He knows what's going on. He sees all of this stuff. He just doesn't understand what's going on. And there's not only him, there's another person, and she was once a cop. And she had come to pick him up to identify the bodies of his family because his brother, his wife, and their kids were killed. And he's trying to come to terms with that. And then all of this stuff happens. And long story short, I don't know the rest. Okay. But I'm just going to read to you because it's way easier to do it that way. Okay. Right now they're in a, they were trying to escape a storm, and they found a small little cave, a little opening, and they climbed into it. And then they found out that it's a tunnel, an old highway tunnel tunneling through the mountain. And so then it's pitch black, and he's got one of those little, the little wind up flashlights that you can shine. You've seen them. They're small, like, that big or whatever. Yeah. I have one around, but no, I don't. In the wife's purse. She doesn't even know how to use it. Well, she does, but never bothers. So yeah, they got one of those things to see where they're going. And he can smell fresh air coming from the other side. So he knows there's a way out. So they're going to cross this huge tunnel. And there's nothing but broken down cars. Most of them are all rusted, but there's a few fiberglass bodied cars that are still around. And so they're on their way, and they're going to find stuff. Okay. Part 4, Wit, Chapter 15. Okay, let me get this. All righty. We crossed the darkness. I don't know how long it took because there was no way for us to keep track of the days. All I know is that it took another full sleep. I suppose that it'd be another day, but I can't be certain. All the same, I was grateful to have the tiny light Zard gave me. Jen would wind the crank, and I'd climb over broken, decaying pieces of rusted metal and broken plastic. I was pulling up on the bundled tusker hide below me before tying my rope to whatever jagged piece of metal there was. You should tie one end around you in case you slip, I said. I helped pull her up, and as she climbed in total darkness, the light having lost itself to the shadows. She tried to wind it up as I pulled her up, and sometimes there was enough light so that she'd be able to avoid pieces of metal that threatened to slice her arm or her leg. We hadn't eaten anything for what felt like 3 days, but it was probably closer to 4. True to my word, though, I found the stream of air. It was high up and out of reach, and I cursed whatever god there was for placing it out of reach. I wound the tiny crank on the light and shone it up, looking for a way up the wall. How come I can't see anything, she said. Because it's dark outside. How big is it? I was wondering that myself. I thought it had to be large enough for us to get out, but then if it was large enough that we could squeeze through, predators would have been able to pass through and we hadn't come across any. That didn't mean they weren't there. It meant there it meant they were bigger than the hole. "How do we get up there?" she asked when I didn't answer. "We climb," I said. "Give me some light." She cranked the wheel as I measured out a length of rope. I tied one end around my waist and told her to hold the other end. "Climb? Climb what?" "The wall. What did you think?" "Are you mad?" "Don't answer that. I think you proved that a long time ago." "Can you think of another way?" I said. I approached the wall and looked at it closely, telling her to shine the light on it. It felt damp, and I thought it might be a good sign. I pulled my dagger out and stuck it in the wall, picking at it. The cement easily crumbled under the dagger's blade, and I stepped back to think about it for a moment. "It doesn't look very stable," she said, shining the light on the ground and looking at the pieces of cement that fell, rolling to her feet. "That might not be a bad thing," I said, driving the dagger into the wall again. It went in deeper this time. It was more difficult pulling it out, but it gave me an idea all the same. I stepped back to think about it as the light died out, and the only sound we heard was the sound of her cranking the tiny wheel again. "There was one of those big things back there," I said, turning to look at the twisted metal hulks. "A truck," she said, nodding. "We need something long and sharp that I can use to dig into the wall. It'd be nice if I could find two of them so I don't have to use the dagger. It's not too high, just too high for us to reach." "And then what?" "If I drive them into the wall, I might be able to pull myself up high enough to squeeze through the opening. I can pull you up once I get outside. I'd like to get out before it gets light outside." "That sounds crazy enough to work," she said. She cranked the wheel for the light, and I followed her into the darkness. She seemed to know exactly what she was looking for. She climbed over broken pieces of twisted metal, searching for something that was long, flat, and contorted, lost under a pile of broken metal. There were small doors hanging on the bottom of whatever it was she was looking at, and she pulled on them, opening them and pulling out old, rotted lengths of flat rope that crumbled in her hands, obviously not what she was looking for. In a moment, she came out with a long, slender rod as long as my arm. It was tapered so that at one end was smaller and thinner than the rest of it. "All of these things have them." "What is it?" "It's a bar. I don't know what they're called, but they use these trailers to transport things, goods, foods, building material, that sort of thing. But they had to tie them down so they wouldn't fall off. They use these to crank them tight," she said, holding the rod up. "They use straps to hold them down when they were moving. They all have these. All we have to do is find another trailer, and you'll have two of them." It took us longer than I would have liked, but we finally found a second one. We made our way back, and I drove the first bar into the wall, driving it hard, the aching kind. I I tried pulling myself up slowly, testing it. I drove the second one in a little higher where the cement was softer. It was like hard mud. The bar sank to my wrist. I pulled up on the first one, pulling myself up again. All of my weight was on both bars. I tried pulling the first one out, but struggled. It was my left side. I had to swing myself from side to side like a weighted bar for cooking. Oh, sorry, for cooking, but twisting and turning it as much as I could. It was all a matter of timing, I realized when the bar came out. When the bar wouldn't come out, I had to hold myself and work it out. When it wouldn't go in deep enough, I had to pound at the hole until I felt it was deep enough. Sometimes it was two swings. Twice it was three. It was painful, hard work. My body screamed in protest every time I drove a bar into the. Oh, wow, goodness. Okay. Do I have to go back and, do I have to go back? Okay. It was painful, hard work. My body screamed in protest every time I drove a bar into the wall. It was getting harder and harder. Pulling them out was even worse. With sweat running into my eyes, stinging them, I shook my head and looked up. I could see stars. I pulled up on the upper bar and got myself chest high. Then, pulling myself up and standing on the bottom bar, I stood up. I didn't want to think about what I was doing. If we didn't get through that hole on top of this rotting wall, we were going to die. I reached over, putting my left hand on the wall and slowly pulling the bar out. In one swift motion, I turned, driving the bar in as far as I could. I thought it was another spot of rotting cement. It proved to be that and more. The wall collapsed, and I rode it out into the night. Had it been daylight, I would have been blinded. My father told me stories of men trapped in caves for weeks at a time. The night was bright enough with a half moon in the light. The stars were out, but barely. The dawn was fast approaching, and all I could think of were the predators roaming the woods at the end of a 4-day fast. Like myself, I thought. The first rule of survival is kill or be killed. That could mean anything from a low growl in the woods to an attack by other wilder bands as afraid of letting you out as they were of letting you in. The second rule of survival is find shelter. The wall landed on what looked to be an endless sea of twisting metal. With the moon as bright as it was, I could see that most of the cars on the bottom of the pile were grown over with twisted tendrils of moss and lichen. There were trees that had grown through a great many others. The moon slipped behind clouds, but it was still light enough for us to see where we were going. That's where we'll find shelter tonight, I said, winding the rope up. We have to let ourselves adjust to the light gradually. What better way than sunrise? We have to stay up until our eyes tell us it's okay. As soon as we can see into one of those little cubby holes, we'll stop and make camp. I'll go find us something to eat. You'll come with me and get firewood. And what's that one rule that matters as far as getting firewood goes? Don't wander out of sight, she said. I tossed her an end of the rope. Tie this around yourself again. We don't want us getting mixed up in the dark and lose each other. How far do you plan to go tonight? This light isn't going to do us any good out here. The moon's bright enough. You just stay attached to me. You can't hunt with me tied to you. I think you mean you can't, I laughed. It felt good to laugh. There's all sorts of things, the little cubby holes in there, and if you haven't fallen in on themselves by now, they're not about to fall on us tonight. We'll want to find it someplace where we can be close to the trees, somewhere in the middle. And we need water. Don't drink anything you find on the ground. We need running water coming out of the trees. And by that, I mean the trees over there, I said, pointing across from us. I wanted to get as far away from where we were. I needed to get my bearings. I've never been this far south before, didn't know where to find game or water. I was hoping to use the stars to guide me, but with the clouds, it was impossible for me to know where I was. I'd lost all the maps Gerald had copied somewhere in the river. He'd copied them out like someone who valued treasure. We'll have shelter as long as we follow the old trail, I said, looking at the endless ribbon of rotted cars. I don't think it'll last much longer. It goes up into the mountains, she says. It was the biggest mass exodus of mankind when it happened. People were already driving south to get away from the volcano. A lot of people died because of ash. They were breathing it in, and the waves were coming, remember? A 300-foot tidal wave travels faster than you can imagine, and there were 2 more after it, smaller, maybe 100 feet, but just as devastating. You see the best and worst of people at times like that. You sound as if you were there, I said. I was. I nodded, not knowing what to say. The sky was getting lighter. I could see a few stars peeking out from behind the cloud cover, but they weren't as bright as they were a moment ago. The land was full of birdsong. I could see old abandoned bridges above me, most of them broken, leaving huge gaps in the dawn yawning across the dried-out gully we were following. I paused to pull my longbow out of the tusker hide, and she watched me do it, not saying anything else. I also pulled out my sword, scabbard, and quiver. I rummaged through the bag to see if there was anything else I might need. There were a couple of pieces of dried meat. I took a bite and gave the rest to her before we set off on our march. I notched an arrow, picking up the bundle and swung it up onto my shoulder. I looked at her briefly and started walking. She picked up the rope and looped it as she slowly caught me up, walking a few paces behind me. You said you've never been this far south before. Is it unusual for people to travel such great distances? I've never met anyone who traveled this far south before. Not even Zard has been here. How do you know that? Don't you think he would have told me if he did? Not if he was in the slaver army. Why would that stop him from telling me? Maybe he was embarrassed. By what? Because he was a slaver, she said, as if that was enough. Maybe he didn't want you to know what they were like. Obviously, you've never come across them before. He did everything he could to keep you away from them. Why do you think that? Because you've lived in the foothills of the Vandals. So? So the slavers never went there, did they? She added. Until they did, I said, and she nodded. What do you think that means? She asked. What makes you think it has to mean anything? They came up here to get more slaves. Why? Isn't that what you do when you have a large army? You conquer the surrounding tribes? And you think it's as simple as that, she said. You don't? Usually when an army moves to expand, it's because of one person. A king, a chief, a president, it doesn't matter what the title he uses. It's the army he controls. With an army under someone's control, people obey. It's always been that way. You wouldn't know anything about that. I wouldn't know anything about that. No, I suppose you wouldn't, never having been this far south. Never having lived like that before, I said. Were you that free? Was there no overlord you and Zard answered to? It was called the wasteland for a reason, I pointed out. How did you treat travelers? Depends. Depends? On what? Let's say if I was to go into the wasteland, stumbling, blind, unarmed, starving, lost, would you help me? I shook my head. No? You have nothing to offer. You have no food, so I'll have to give you mine. You have no weapons, so I'll have to protect you. You're lost, so I'll have to lead you out. Easier just to drop you with an arrow than have to deal with all of that. Even if I was no threat, that just means you're weak. This world has no need for weakness. Can you hunt? Can you dress a rabbit, tan a hide, build a fire, make a shelter? See, you have nothing to offer. You'd be better off dead. Do you think the slavers are any different? That they're better or worse? They kill the weak and the infirm. They enslave the strong because at least they have something to offer. What? Those strong enough to survive are sold. They work the mines, the fields, fish the seas, tend to their masters as domestics, they're educators, and they entertain them in the arenas. For someone who doesn't know the slavers, you know a lot about them, she said. Zard, I said, as if that should explain it. The sun came up from behind the hills. The light had been so gradual we hadn't even noticed. Our shadows stretched out far behind us, and I shielded my eyes as I looked at the twisted trail of broken life. It stretched as far as the horizon. There were reflections that caught the light like a fugitive, casting it to the side. I could see the sun playing along a ribbon of water in the distance. That's where we want to go, I said. Why? That's water. If there's water, there'll be food. What about the slaver army? We haven't seen any sign of them. They're still there. You say that without even seeing them? You only have to look up to know they're still there, I said, looking at the circling birds. Scavengers always follow an army. The sun cleared the horizon, and by that time, our eyes had adjusted to the growing light. There was a mist in the distance covering the ground and weaving through the broken, untold multitudes of wreckage now lost to the past. It was the stream of the morning's dew. It was the steam of the morning's dew rising from the metal and plastic of all the rusting cars and trucks, Jen said. The mist caught the branches of the trees hanging as the sun broke through, with the branches casting long shadows in the fog like some vivid picture of years ago. I kept walking, scanning the distant woods to our right. I was looking for open land with maybe a small copse of trees rising like an island in that sea of green fields. I was looking for a place the birds would go to roost. I could see the small stream I'd noticed earlier, winking in the rising sun, and told myself, steer clear of any marshy grounds. The idea was to be a hunter, not the hunted. At last I was satisfied with what I saw and turned to look at the trees growing up through the dead husks of the cars. I wanted cover, but I also needed something that would allow us to spread the tusker hide out and tie it into place. I found the place I wanted and even had an old truck wheel we could use as a fire pit. There were several larger vehicles pushed up against each other, and we were able to clear an area large enough for both of us to stretch out. There was a small case somewhere in the corner I'd kicked loose while crawling through on my hands and knees. I picked it up and dragged it into the light with me. "What is it?" she asked. "I don't know. A box of some sort," I said, pulling my dagger out of my scabbard and pressing it against the moss-covered seam. It opened easily. "Far seers," I said, picking them up and taking the lens caps off. I looked at the trees across from us, adjusting them until I was able to see. "You've used them before." "Zard had them a long time ago," I said, looking up at the sky. "What else is in there?" I put the farseers down and rummaged through the box. There was a book in the bottom, and I pulled it out. I expected the pages to dissolve in my hands, but they didn't, even after I flipped through the pages. "Maps," I said. "Let me see that," she said, and I gave it to her. Giral had been the one to read maps. Looking at them did little to open the world up to me. I sorted through the box, picking up a finder, and looking at it, held it in my hands. "A compass," she said, nodding. "Is that what you call it?" "What do you call it?" "Zard called it a seeker. At least it still works." Do you know how to use it?" "He taught me, yes." She closed the book and looked at the pile of twisting metal around us, nodding to herself. She crawled into another pile of broken cars and came out a moment later, dragging a hatchet and a large hammer. "Do all of these things have hidden treasures?" I asked. "I think most of them have been picked clean. I suppose the people that survived just came back and took what they needed over the years. But they would have only taken what they needed from the outside cars. They wouldn't have been able to crawl inside and search things out properly, until everything melted. And by then, everything would have rusted." "How long would that take?" "Not long enough for them to have forgotten," she said, looking down the endless line of cars. "Then something happened. There's no one here. This would have been the best place for them to stay. They had shelter here, food, water. Where else would they go?" "Your guess is as good as mine," she said. "How many years ago did all of this happen?" "Why? What are you thinking?" "Can you read those maps?" "Yes, but I can't read them if I don't know where we are to begin with." What do you need to tell What do you need to tell you where you are?" "A sign." "A sign? What sort of a sign? The birds aren't good enough?" "Not that kind of a sign," she said with a smile. "They used to have signs on the side of the road, telling you how far it was to this or that town. I just need to know the name of a town, and I'll be able to tell you where we are." "I've seen those," I said. "So have I," she said, "just not lately." "I think I know where the survivors went." "Where?" "We'll know as soon as I find a sign and you tell us where we are." "You mean they went to the nearest city?" "Can you think of a better place to go?" "Well, what about the slavers?" "They are the slavers," I said. "What about them?" "Where'd they come from?" "They are the slavers." "Ricky." It was dark. Not as dark as it was back in the tunnel, but dark just the same. And it was muggy. I realized it was the tarp I was under, the one Wit used for cover. It was thick, and as much as it might stop an animal's teeth from punching in your body, I was thinking more along the pounds per square inch bite. As much as the tarp would prevent an animal from ripping my loins out, it wouldn't stop it from breaking every bone in my body if with every bite it made. I could feel her beside me. It was so strange thinking that this was, in reality, my sister-in-law in another timeline, from which I've somehow escaped, only to find myself in this one, a future present. Is that is that such a thing? I'd been considering it for some time. As much as I was stuck in this man's mind, I was unable to leave. But he lied, I told myself. It was something I wanted to shout about the moment he took it. Why didn't he tell her? What's he hiding? I stirred and rolled over. Her body was tied up against me. I could feel the heat coming off her, hear her steady rhythmic breathing. I could smell the sourness of her night breath and memorized it. part of me wanted to reach my hand out and grab her tit, just hold and feel its softness, feel the warmth. And the part that told me it wouldn't be the smart thing to do didn't speak up at all. I took that as a sign and reached my arm over and around her, pulling her closer. It reminded me so much of holding Mandy. I could feel her stir against me and buried my nose into the crook of her shoulder, my hot breath a gentle purr. She shuddered at the same way. She shuddered the same way Mandy used to, and I found myself kissing her neck. I slid my hand into the open coat, up her smooth ribs. She reached behind her head to hang on to me, her breath coming out as a pant. I squeezed her tit, pinching the nipple, and she pushed me away, squirming out of my arms and wrapping the coat around herself like it was her own personal cocoon. I never wanted her as much as I wanted her at that moment, and so I lay down and looked up at a ceiling that was full of tiny holes. I could see the half moon, but it was like looking at it through a cheese grater. "I'm sorry," I said. "I woke up thinking of Mandy. It was her I was thinking about, not you. Think about it. Just last week, you were my sister-in-law. Not only am I not her, but you're not you," she said, and I found myself nodding my head in the dark. "I'm Whit," I told myself. Whit, the man who loves his wife to such extremes he'd cross a continent to find her. And Whit, the man who didn't tell her about the gun he found in the bottom of the case. There you go. Chapter 16, Whit. The next morning I went out early to gather firewood. I didn't have far to go, but I made certain that I could see the small camp at all times. I didn't want to take a chance that some predator had picked up our scent. I brought the longbow and my sword with me. One learns not to go unarmed into wastelands. But I brought the 2 water bladders as well, making certain to fill them. I tied them to my belt where they sloshed against my thigh. When I got back to the campsite, I noticed there were still embers glowing in the fire pit I made last night. I took the belt and scabbard off, making sure to lay them down on top of the gun I'd found, then bent down and blew on the embers, gently, teasing them awake. It took a while, but eventually there was a small tendril of smoke, and I dropped dried leaves on top, blowing harder. A flame leapt out. I cut up 2 small willow sprigs with my dagger and softened them in the small puddle of water I poured out. When the sprigs were soft enough, I used one to scrape the morning off my teeth, chewing some of the mint I'd found from the poultice I'd made. I dropped kindling on the fire and sat back for a moment, enjoying its warmth. I cut and hacked at the dead branches I brought back, smashing them with the heavy hammer, and Jen finally crawled out from under the tusker hide. "Did I wake you?" I grinned. "I was getting up anyway," she smiled. She looked down and saw that her jacket was partially open and pulled it tight around herself. "I have to think about getting myself a new wardrobe," she said. "And what's that?" I asked. "A wardrobe. Clothes. We'll come across something." I was wondering when I should tell her about the gun. All I knew about guns was what Zard told me, and that was precious little. But she claimed she lived in the past as well as the future, and if anyone would have an idea about how a gun worked, it would be her. I mean, what's the point in me having something I know is deadly, but have no idea how to use? And what if someone finds it or steals it? Sooner or later, that's going to come back and bite me hard. "I found something yesterday." "Oh?" She was smiling. I didn't know if she was being sincere or teasing me, and for a brief moment, that almost made me gasp. I thought maybe she'd remembered last night. I was at a loss for words. What is it about a woman that can make a man feel like he's being toyed with? I was remembering things that weren't even from my own life. I found myself thinking about Ricky and accepting that he was a part of me on a different timeline. And that's where I was remembering the other Jen from my sister-in-law and Jimmy. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted you to look at it and tell me if it still works. "Do you mean the gun?" she said. How do you know about the gun?" "It was Ricky, who told me about it last night. Woke me up out of a sleep so deep, you'd think I'd died." "I told you?" "Not you. Ricky," she pointed out. "But how did he know?" I thought you said he was dormant when I was awake. That doesn't sound like he was dormant, or even something close to that. He's a part of me, you said, but he can't tell me what to do or control me. Yet, instead, he betrays me? He thought it was too dangerous. To who? You? Probably to you, she said, and I thought that made sense. I think he was afraid you'd shoot yourself. I don't know how this works, but I'm pretty sure that'd be the end of both you. That would be the end of it for both of you if that happened. You'd have to start a new timeline all over again. He said, you don't know how to use it well enough. I wanted to believe her, but I wanted to believe that about him even more. I reached under my scabbard, pulling the gun out. It got tangled up in my belt and took a second effort on my part to finally free it up. It was big, dark, and heavy. There wasn't any rust on it, but it still couldn't make it fire for some reason. She pushed on something, or maybe pulled on it, I don't know, but something long and full of bullets fell out of the handle. She pulled back on something on top of it, and the top half of the gun pulled back. Something jumped out of it, and I caught it in midair. What's this? I asked, holding the thing up. That, my friend, is the bullet that kills you. You always want to make sure the chamber's empty. Obviously, you know how to use this thing, I said, tossing the bullet back to her. Bobby showed me, but I think Ricky was right telling me about it, she said. Oh? Why? The only thing that saved you from killing yourself was the fact that the safety was on. Why? What's that supposed to do? It's supposed to prevent you from shooting the gun and killing yourself, she said as she let the slider go and aimed it, pulling the trigger. That's why it's called a safety. There was a loud click. Apparently, it did what it was supposed to do. It works, I said. Oh, yeah, it works, she said. And I'll bet it sounds like thunder, too. You shoot this thing off and you'll have the whole slave army coming down on you in a heartbeat. Why do you think that? A lot of what you said yesterday made sense. The slavers probably are the descendants of the people trying to get away from the volcanoes and the earthquakes. I'll bet they drove as far away from there as fast as they could. Some made it to the safety of the cities, and some didn't. They ended up here. There had to be millions of them, all the same. There couldn't possibly have been enough food to feed them all. And then there was that little mini ice age that followed. What's that? I asked. That's when the temperatures drop and keep dropping. The snow and ice probably stayed for years in some places. This whole place would have been buried under 200 feet of snow. Some of them probably resorted to cannibalism, eating their dead, just to survive. Those numbers, those millions, they would have dropped off quickly after that happened. I'll bet you the millions would have dwindled down to thousands by the time the snow finally melted. You can bet they would have left the cold behind the first chance they got, and when they finally marched out, what do you think they were looking for? More survivors? Shelter. And where do you think they found that? In the old cities, naturally. There's got to be one around here somewhere, she said. Can you think of where else they'd go? No, not that they knew what the city had to offer, but they knew where it was. It would have been woven into their mythology, like El Dorado or Atlantis. Where's that? Doesn't matter, she said. I'll bet there were those among them that knew they could fix it. And they did, didn't they? Those were the strong ones because they survived. They would have headed for the city as soon as the first of the snows came. They would have braved the dropping temperature. I'll bet you some of them had arms, guns like this thing, she said, holding the gun up. She was pushing the bullets out of what she said was the clip and pushing them back into place one at a time. And the others, those who were weak, they became the rabble, didn't they? The latecomers to the party. They're the ones that made up the slaver armies in the beginning. But those others, the ones who thrived, the ones braved the elements, who fixed what was broken and got it all back up and running, those are the ones, aren't they? Those are the ones who ended up being in control, didn't they? They knew that to keep the hungry rabble satisfied, mollified, they had to give them something in return. So they gave them the games. It's an old game in its own way, to be honest. You give the people entertainment and food, and they'll give you the loyalty. And the food, I asked? They know enough about agriculture to build hothouses, she said. She dug around the campsite like someone looking for buried treasure. She pulled up clumps of sod, moss covered branches, and stumps. Still, she was finding old bits of rotted clothing crawling with worms, books, and magazines that were impossible to open or separate. There were plastic containers she opened and just as quickly discarded. And then she found a box of bullets in a sealed container buried under a clump of moss and roots. There were 10 other boxes of bullets that were still sealed. The boxes that were broken were useless, she said, but that didn't stop her from collecting the old bullets and putting them into one of the old plastic containers she'd found. Didn't you just say they were useless? I said. The powder's probably still good. What do you mean by powder? What's that? The stuff that makes it go boom, she smiled. Is that the noise they make? I'd never heard a gun being shot before. Zard told me it was pretty close to putting your head inside a metal drum and someone hitting the outside of it with a stick as hard as they can. Only louder, he said. Much louder. I told myself if I could learn how to use the gun, we'd never go hungry again. I could take down bigger prey and defend myself against predators, the two-legged kind as well as the four-legged kind. I'd be someone to be reckoned with. But was that a future I wanted for myself? I was still sitting in front of the fire enjoying the heat while she cleaned her teeth and saw to her own needs. I told her not to go out of sight, under any circumstances, not after what happened with those underground dwellers. I couldn't protect her if I didn't know where she was. She agreed, but said she needed water to wash herself. I pointed to the two bladders sitting near the fire. Warm enough by now. There should be enough in there. In the two for you to wash yourself, he added. I added, it'll be better than using the water in the stream. I doubt if you're used to it being so cold. Oh, and mind the poultice. The poultice that fell off in the tunnel, she said with a laugh. The tunnel, I said quickly. Good. That's what it was supposed to do, I added. It must have worked. She walked to a small bush a dozen paces away, and I watched her, nodding. She took off the furs and splashed the water over her body as best she could, crouching out of sight for the sake of her own modesty. I didn't think to look. I had other things on my mind. I was thinking how having a gun and using it were two different things. If I had a gun, would that make me a stronger man or simply a man to be feared? Would it be more of a threat? Would I be more of a threat? And if I was a threat, who was I a threat to? I could hear her saying it already. The ones who control the cities, of course. Wait, did she say cities? Was that because she knew for certain that there had to be more than just one city? I've always wanted to believe that same thing. It's possible there may have been only only the slaver army, but I was almost certain there had to be more than one city. I wasn't about to set off in search of them. That was just asking for trouble, but it wouldn't be such a bad idea to know where they were so I could avoid them. That was the moment I decided having a gun would be the worst thing I could do. Having a gun would lead others to thinking I put myself above them. At the same time, it would make me a target. Zard certainly wouldn't have approved. Putting yourself above the others doesn't make you their better, he'd say. It just makes them bitter. I want you to keep the gun, I said, pushing myself to my feet. What? Why? I have my reasons. I don't want it. Fair enough, I said. Then why did you keep it? Why did you hang on to it? I mean, you went out of your way to hide it from me. I did, I said, crawling into the little enclosure and untying ropes, holding the tusker hide down. I had to sort through my mind. The gun would make me strong in the eyes of my enemies. And I guess that's the point. Right now, I have no enemies. Once they know I have a gun, people are going to want to take it away from me. Why? I sat on the ground looking up at her for a moment, trying to think of what I could say that would care of it. I mean, she had the power now, and was I supposed to give all of that away? First of all, who was I to think I had any power to begin with? The only one you could say I had power over was her. A gun would be the answer to a lot of things around here, I said. We could kill bigger game. The meat would get the meat we get from it could be dried and cured. We wouldn't starve when the cold seasons come. Is that good? Would life be easier for all of us if the old and infirm didn't die? We as a society will run out of food, in which case we'll all starve. I don't know how to use it, I went on. You do. I can find animals for us to eat, but smaller animals, and with my bow. With you along, I'm pretty sure we could take down a bison. I could show you how to shoot, she said. No, for me to have a gun will only lead to trouble for us. There is no us here. There's only you and me. We're not a community. We're not even a tribe. No, with a gun, someone will always be trying to take it from me. I'd have no better I'd be no better than those living in the cities controlling the slavers. What makes you think they wouldn't try to take it away from me? Nothing, but you know how to use it. So I'd rather you kept it. Then let me teach you how to use it. It's too much of a temptation. Zard used to say something his father used to say to him. I guess it was something that was just handed down. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. It's the same thing if I'm the only man with a gun. Who's going to stand up against me? No one until someone does. And then what? Then I have to fight for the right to keep the gun. No one's going to challenge you because as a gun, it has a certain mystique about it. And that's because only you're the one who knows how to use it. I still don't like it. Do you want to leave it here? We don't have to take it with us. She was silent for a moment. She bent over, picking the gun up from where she'd left it in pieces earlier. She put it back together, pulling the slider back on the top and looking at me as she tucked it into her pants. I'll keep it with me. There you go. I finished it. And oh my goodness, look at that. I've been here for an hour. Perfect timing. Perfect. That was like, 40 minutes? 40 minutes of reading or something of that sort? I don't know. But anyways, there's 5 of you. And I don't see any names. I don't see there's a heart. See? That's me putting the hearts up. Did you see them? Nobody answers. I don't know if you're really there, if you can hear me or whatever. It's kind of like difficult to figure out what's going on with this thing. Is it my computer or what? Anyways, I'm gonna have to call it a day because, well, I got to catch up to what I didn't do because I slept in, believe it or not. Yeah, yeah, I was supposed to be out for breakfast at 8:30, and I didn't wake up until 7:45. Yeah, so I have to go clean up what's left in the kitchen because I haven't even been down there. Got to make my bed because I didn't do that either. And what else? Oh, I have to work on 2 different stories. I have to work on Jack of Diamonds, and I have to work on my novella, The Revolutionary, His Wife and Her Lover. And I like the way that one's going because it is about the Nazi movement before they became a movement. It's like it's not how they started. It's never anything like that. That would be an essay. No, it's involves people that are involved with this growing, surging party, and how it grows from there. Yeah, different. It's different. Of course, having a complication like the main character being a female and pregnant puts a whole new spin on things, doesn't it? But I like that idea. It's challenging, and I like challenges. I got to throw this away. That being my story that I printed up. Okie doke. My garbage can is getting pretty full. Okie doke. And so, for after breakfast with my brother, This is me, your host, your reader, your narrator, Ben Woestenburg, saying adieu. I will see you next week at the same bat time and the same bat channel. So for now, I would like to say adieu and ciao for now, arrivederci, and all that other stuff. And let's agree to meet here next week, okay? And bye-bye. End.